Marcel Crok will be our next speaker. He is a president of CLINTEL. They're a fantastic organization. If you don't know of them, look them up, send me a note, I'll direct you to them. They take on the climate establishment here in Europe the way the Heartland Institute does in the United States. And Marcel is going to tell you a little bit more. They deal with the science, but they also deal with policy and the real world impacts of what the climate establishment would impose on us if they can. And in this case, net zero, the net zero agenda, zero carbon dioxide emissions. So Marcel is going to tell you a little bit about that. And let me tell you a little bit about Marcel. Marcel Crok is the co-founder of the Climate Intelligence Foundation, hence CLINTEL. Crok studied chemistry in Amsterdam and Leiden. In 1997, he became a freelance science journalist after an internship. And in 2001, he became the editor of a technology magazine. In 2003, he became the editor of another technology magazine. Marcel knows his stuff. In February 2005, he published a major and critical article about the hockey stick graph. And the article provoked significant response, and he has been closely following the climate debate ever since. In 2019, Crok, together with Emeritus Professor Guus Berkhout of Delft University of Technology, founded CLINTEL. CLINTEL operates as a think tank and watchdog in the areas of climate change and climate policy. In fact, they are so powerful, they're so compelling. Václav Klaus, who spoke on day 2 of this conference, has recently joined as president of CLINTEL. He's that impressed with CLINTEL. He wants to bring his gravitas to that organization. Along with Andy May and a group of researchers from CLINTEL, Crok published a book, The Frozen Climate Views of the IPCC. It's a fantastic book. They critique the 6th IPCC report. And today, Crok is going to critique the net zero agenda in Europe. It's my great pleasure to introduce to you Marcel Crok.
So, thank you so much, James, for your kind words, and too much honor, I would almost say, but it's great to be here. I actually attended, so my hockey stick article was published in 2005. It gained me some attention from the climate skeptics at the time, Fred Singer, well known, of course, to the audience. And Fred Singer actually invited me for the first Heartland conference back in 2007, 6, what was it? 2007. So I attended the first 2 Heartland conferences in New York. It was a great adventure to go there. And Václav Klaus actually was speaking at the second one, I think. So I saw Václav Klaus for the first time then in New York. And we didn't speak. He was very busy. And yeah, so it's amazing that 20 years later, he is still involved in the debate, and I'm still involved in the debate. I mean, for me, really, it was the hockey stick, because I had like an international scoop debunking this hockey stick, the Michael Mann hockey stick, by the Canadians, McIntyre McKittrick, well-known story. But I had the scoop as a journalist, and I really expected at the time that the IPCC and the community in the Netherlands, the Climate Institute, KNMI, that they really would accept this critique, you know, that they would say, oh, ouch, we made a big mistake not checking this graph. And how naive I was, you know. And when I saw the response that they didn't accept my critique, the critique by McIntyre and McKittrick, that really intrigued me to continue my research. I actually left the magazine that you mentioned, and I worked on climate full-time ever since. It was a battle. I mean, it was bad for my career. It was bad for my wallet. You know, I made no money for many years. And thanks to CLINTEL, I now have a reasonable income. But it was really an uphill battle. And so today, yeah, we had Mark Morano speaking on the first day, on Monday, and his talk was actually very positive. All the good things that are happening in the US, you know, and unfortunately, and yesterday, our new president, Václav Klaus, was saying we are not on the winning side, and I think he means by that we in Europe, we are not on the winning side, you know. And for today, I was preparing this talk. and I was focusing on Europe and the climate policy in Europe. And I have to admit that Klaus is probably right. I will give you many examples, mainly from Germany and from the Netherlands, because I am from the Netherlands and I'm most familiar with the situation in the Netherlands. And Germany and the Netherlands are two very important countries in the Netherlands, because we have a lot of financial debt in Southern Europe, like in Italy and Greece, etc. And Europe as a whole is responsible for these debts, and Germany and Holland are the countries paying most. So if the economy collapses in Germany and in the Netherlands, then this is bad news for the whole of Europe. Maybe Poland can save us because Poland is doing the right stuff, but Germany and the Netherlands and the UK, Liz Truss yesterday spoke about this, they are making very bad choices, and climate policy is dominant. In my opinion, climate policy is dominant in this kind of thing. So I think I have some presentation. I have a presentation, but I think, Jim, we can skip several slides, because James actually already explained a little bit about CLINTEL. So we can go through the president, Václav Klaus, and then, the World Climate Declaration. So after that, this is an important project by CLINTEL. So when we were founded in 2019, my co-founder, Guus Berghout, he is a professor in the Netherlands, we decided to publish this World Climate Declaration. You can go to our website clintel.org, and you see we have now more than 2,000 signatories, scientists, experts in the field of engineering and energy, etc., and economists and lawyers. And they agree with us that there is no climate emergency. Actually, a funny story was that in 2019, the European Parliament declared a climate emergency. So there was a majority in the European Parliament declaring a climate emergency. And we were also invited by a few members of Parliament, European Parliament. And so we hosted a session about our World Climate Declaration. And one lady from the UK, a member of Parliament, came there, and she said at a certain point, "You, CLINTEL, are responsible for future manslaughter by saying things like this, you know." And I also remember that the Nobel Prize winner, William Nordhaus from the US, he won the Nobel Prize for climate economy, actually, and he is not a skeptic, but he was in his speech in 2018 in Sweden, in Stockholm, in his Nobel speech, you can watch it online. He was saying that what is the optimum for climate policy, you know, because climate policy will have a cost, but climate change could also have a cost. So as an economist, he was looking for the optimum, and the optimum he reached in his model at 3.5 degrees Celsius of warming. So way above the Paris targets, you know, and he presented this in Stockholm. So next year, of course, Brussels, they invited him, of course, yeah, because climate is so important. No way. They invited Greta Thunberg in Brussels, and they didn't invite William Nordhaus, you know. So this is so typical. This is so typical for Europe. So we continue, Jim. The CLINTEL World Climate Declaration, you can find it on our website. The assessment by CLINTEL, James already mentioned, with a group of scientists, you see them here. We analyzed the latest IPCC report, the 6th IPCC report. We worked on this for 2 years because it's really like IPCC report is 1,500 pages, you know. So we did a lot of work, and we published this book, The Frozen Climate Views of the IPCC. Go to our website, go to our web shop, clintel.shop, and you see we translated the book in Dutch, in German, in French now. We have a Danish version as well. And so this is the kind of things that CLINTEL is also trying to do. We are trying to become like a global coordinator of climate realist groups in the world, like working together with the US, with the UK, with the Global Warming Policy Foundation, with EIKE in Germany that you also work with, James. So we are trying to become like an international coordinating center and doing projects like this. Yeah, we should work together on the next IPCC report, AR7, that is upcoming now, yeah, in a few years. And so Climate the movie, this is the next slide, Jim. Climate the movie is a well-known movie. I think for the audience, most of you probably have seen it. But we organized a premiere in the Netherlands with Tom Nelson. Tom Nelson is well known from his podcast, the Tom Nelson Climate Podcast. So Tom Nelson came to the Netherlands, and we organized a premiere in the Netherlands. On the next slide, and for the first time, I was surprised that the room was. We had a theater with 600 places. It was fully booked, and so this is this is a positive message, at least, that climate realism is growing, I think, in the Netherlands. But yeah, later on I will have some bad news about this as well, unfortunately. And so my last slide about CLINTEL is that we are becoming a worldwide organization. Yeah, later this year you will see that in several countries, people will start to organize, like they start like CLINTEL Hungary, or they start CLINTEL Italy, or CLINTEL. We were talking here with some Swiss people to start CLINTEL Switzerland, or maybe CLINTEL Alps. How does that sound? You know, so those are the plans. Okay, now to the main topic, the net zero policy in Europe. So I didn't hear it so far here. I've been here all 3 days. But this, for me, is like a symbolic moment. Yeah. Recently, in the beginning of January, we had a big blackout in Berlin. What happened? So we had a big blackout in Spain. Of course, you heard about that, and everybody is talking about this. Yeah, this is because we have so much renewables, and the grid cannot deal with this. So we had a big blackout in Spain. Although Spain denies this, yeah, that it is due to renewables. But many experts believe it's the renewables had a big role in this. But this Berlin blackout was actually a terrorist attack. It was a terrorist attack. 100,000 people in Berlin were in the dark, and it was freezing. It was very cold. It was dark. Some people had to go to hotels or gyms to sleep there, because it was impossible for them to stay at home. Yeah, and the terrorist, the group that caused it, sent a letter to the media, a 2,500 word letter, and this is just a very small quote. The group is called the Vulkaangruppe, so the volcano group. I think it's related to Antifa and other groups like that. And this is one of their quotes. I will read it. In their greed for energy, the earth is being drained, sucked dry, burned, tormented, razed, raped, destroyed. Entire regions are being rendered uninhabitable under the beat. They simply burn up, or habitats vanish beneath the floods from deluges and due to rising sea levels. This could all be Extinction Rebellion, or a left-wing political party, but then the latest sentence: shutting down fossil fuel power plants is hands-on work. So. And this you should not see in a political party statement, of course. But so this is what happened and for me, this is really symbolic for where Europe is at the moment. So the next slide. Are Europeans worried about climate change? In the US, Gallup polls, we see that the fear for climate change is decreasing rapidly. In my opinion, that also is happening in Europe. But if you look at the official polls, this is the Eurobarometer, 85% of the respondents consider climate change a serious problem for the world. 85%. Climate change is seen as the most pressing issue in several member states and among the top 3 concerns in most others. This is a big contrast with what is happening in the US. So the next slide. And at the same time that this group has this terrorist attack, you wonder, maybe Europe is not doing enough, maybe Europe is too far behind. But Europe already has the most ambitious climate plans in the world. by far, I would say. Yeah. So there is a net zero target in 2050. And this target is legally binding in European climate law. And there is a Green Deal as a result of this, with extremely ambitious targets. Of course, net zero in 2050 means that you need extremely ambitious targets. So the targets now are 55% reduction in 2030 and even 90% reduction already in 2040. That was recently decided. And in Europe, we have an emission trading system, ETS. The US doesn't have this. It's already in place, and it covers now 40% of the emissions. So it's mainly for energy, for power plants, for industry, etc. But they have to pay this price. So this is an extra penalty for them compared to competitors in China and in the US. And the price currently today, the price is 84 euros per ton of CO2. And if you calculate this into a liter of gasoline, it's about 20 cents. 20 cents a liter of gasoline. They have to pay. The industry has to pay. And we have also very ambitious renewable energy targets. The next target for 2030 is 42.5% renewable energy target. And nuclear is not regarded as renewable. So it can only come from hydro, from wind, from solar, and from biomass. And this is not target for electricity production. No, this is target for the primary energy use. So this is extremely ambitious. At the same time, if we look at the share of the global GDP, this graph, you see that Europe is in the decline for a long time. Already for 10, 15 years, Europe is in decline. Our GDP is falling, while at the same time, the GDP of the US is climbing, and also China is increasing rapidly. So Europe is losing competitiveness compared to China and the USA. And if you look at this, the next slide about the CO2 emissions by region, I only selected Europe, US, and China. You see the strong correlation between the GDP going like this and the CO2 emissions going like this. Some green people claim that Europe is able to decouple growth with the climate policy. And these graphs show the opposite. So CO2 emissions are declining most rapidly in Europe, stronger than the US. Yeah, the US is also declining due to the fracking. Yeah, due to fracking, there is a change from coal to gas. And because of that, the CO2 emissions in the US are decreasing a little bit. But in Europe, it was 37% so far since 1990. So we are doing great, you could say. So why these terrorist groups should move somewhere else, not they should get away from Berlin and should go somewhere else. But so we see that the GDP is falling. And in my opinion, there is a clear and one-on-one relationship with the climate policy and the electricity prices. Here in this slide, you see electricity prices in Europe compared to China and the US again. And it's a huge difference. Electricity is 2 to 3 times more expensive in Europe, and the gas prices are even 4 to 5 times more expensive. And if we go to the next slide, which is a famous graph by Björn Lomborg, if we take the big picture, Europe at the moment is only 6% of the global emissions. 6%, and we are trying to get to 0. At the same time, China is increasing rapidly, And Björn Lomborg here calculates with the UN climate model, what is the effect of Europe going to net zero in 2100? And so in a generation, the effect is only 0.02 of a degree globally. And in 2100, the effect is only 0.08 degrees Celsius globally. So the effect is not even calculable, and still we are doing this. The next slide, climate policy, also from Björn Lomborg, climate policy don't do like the EU. Sometimes, especially in Brussels, you hear arguments, yeah, the fact that we have high energy prices is due to the war in Ukraine. And in this graph, you see that indeed in 2022, we had a big spike in energy prices, of course. But you see that the tendency of increasing prices in Europe was way longer. Yeah, the prices went up already for the last 20 years, especially when Germany started the Energiewende, the energy transition. Prices started to going up. And here you have the ETS prices, and you saw they were low for a long time, but then they were too low in the opinion of the leaders of the European Union. So they decided to get a lot of carbon credits out of the market, and then indeed the prices started to rise. And so it went up to 100 euros per ton, and now it's about 80. So yeah, industry has to pay this. Okay, let's now look into Germany. And we can immediately say there is a German deindustrialization taking place at the moment. And here you see, for example, here you see Poland. I added Poland. And here you see Italy and Germany and Poland. And you see Poland is doing incredibly well, actually. Yeah, Poland is increasing the industrial production, while Germany at the same time is decreasing its production. And manufacturing, steel, chemistry, chemical industry, automotive, they all suffer from the extremely high prices. And here is just one example of Volkswagen to shut 3 factories. And you can Google this and you see many factories in Germany closing, many factories in Holland closing, chemical factories. Yes, this is already happening. Also in Holland, lots of Holland is also, many people maybe don't know this, but Holland has always traditionally been a big had a big chemical industry, and they are suffering from all the regulations and all the. In Holland, it's even worse, because in Holland, on top of the ETS, the industry has to pay an extra CO2 tax. This is truly crazy, because we already have like a uniform European ETS price, and Holland added on top of this a CO2 tax for the industry. That's truly amazing. So the German deindustrialization since 2019, 272,000 industrial jobs were lost. That's 5% of the total positions. In the last 2 years, 120,000 industrial jobs were destroyed, with almost 50,000 in automotive alone. And there are announced cuts over 125,000 additional jobs at risk at Volkswagen and ThyssenKrupp, steel industry. And so Germany is our leader in the energy transition. Yeah, they call it the Energiewende. Yeah. So what did they do? We all know the story. They closed down all the nuclear power stations. Yeah, in 2023, it was the last one because of Fukushima. The real reason was that Merkel was about to lose elections, and she decided, okay, I use Fukushima, the disaster in Fukushima, I use it to close them down. And it worked because she won the election. But now Germany has to pay the price for this. And here in this graph, so Germany wants to electrify the society. Yeah, they want to electrify transport, industry. They want to electrify everything. So you would expect that electricity consumption is going up rapidly. But here in this graph, you see electricity consumption, and you see that electricity consumption is actually decreasing in the last few years. How is this possible? Well, the reason is the deindustrialization. The system totally collapses. How are they doing in terms of CO2? This is a fascinating graph. You only look at the right-hand side of the. In blue, you see France, and this is the CO2 emissions per day, yeah, for the electricity production. And you see France is terribly low because of all their nuclear power station. And on the gray dots is Germany, and this was last year, and you can see here that there was not a single day where Germany had less CO2 emissions than France. every single day, France had lower CO2 emissions in the electricity production than Germany. Although Germany so far invested 500 billion in the energy transition, 500 billion. And estimates are that they need 10 times more if they truly want to go to net zero with solar and wind, with renewables, you know. So this is completely impossible. So it will not happen, but these are the estimates. Last week, this was also not mentioned so far in this conference, Friedrich Merz, the Chancellor of Germany, gave a talk for corporations 5 days ago, and he said, to my amazement, the nuclear phase out was a big strategic mistake. Remember that his Merkel is from the same party. Yeah, so this is an accusation back to Merkel as well. So Merz now admits going out of nuclear was a big mistake. This is breaking news, you know. This is amazing. And probably, does he really mean it? It's not very important, because what is important is that he said it. It's now on the record. He said it was a big strategic mistake. Do I believe him that he really means it? No, not really. By the way, Merz, about what did he say as well in during this talk last week? We are now making the most expensive energy transition in the entire world. I don't know of a second country that makes it as difficult and as expensive for itself as Germany does. These were also, this is also a quote from his talk last year. Why don't I believe that he means it? Because only a few months ago, there is this picture of cooling towers that were destroyed in Germany. So he also said during the talk, we shouldn't, the last 3 remaining nuclear power plants, we should have kept them. So they didn't do it. And in the talk, he also say, yeah, we can use these locations to start new power plants. But what does he mean with new power plants? Germany is now going to build gas power plants. Yeah, so nuclear is going to be changed by gas. This is now the strategy. It is a start. It is a start that Merz admitted this. So deindustrialization in Germany, in the Netherlands, also in Belgium. This is so. What also happens a lot is this. This is just one example that a recent one. It's a company called Vioneo, and they announced this week that they are not going to build a 1.5 billion plastic factory in Antwerp, in Belgium, because the economic situation is not good enough, and they will probably do it in China. Yeah, so some factories are being closed, other factories are not being built. Yeah, people are not investing in Europe anymore. And this is Sir Jim Ratcliffe. He's a British owner of Ineos, a big chemical company, and he sent an open letter last year to von der Leyen, to the Commission. And the letter, you can Google his name and the open letter to the EU. The letter is very short, but I selected some quotes because it's really powerful stuff. Chemicals in Europe is facing extinction. Government policies have resulted in enormously high energy prices and crippling carbon tax bills. The gas bill is 100 million higher than its US equivalent. The electricity bill is 40 million higher than in the US. The carbon tax bill is rising towards a shocking 100 million. More, government policies will shut all petrochemicals in Europe. All our major competitors are planning for withdrawal from Europe as government has failed to act time after time. Decarbonizing Europe by deindustrialization is idiotic. We lose jobs and security, and the CO2 simply floats back over Europe anyway, yeah, because it moves to other parts of the world. And finally, the consequence of this policy is that Europe will import all its raw materials from the USA and China, who will benefit enormously. So congratulations, James, Jim, and the others. You will have the profit, and we will suffer. So, okay, let's go to the Netherlands, because that's where I live. Where I have been living there all my life. And in Holland, we are a population. People see us Dutch people as very rational people. We were traders. We are very practical and rational, you know. But if you look at climate policy in the Netherlands, it's almost as bad as Germany. We are following Germany, and some of the decisions that we made are maybe even worse than Germany. And I will give you an example. Holland, the Netherlands, owns the biggest gas field in Europe. It's in Groningen. It's this place. And because of the Paris Agreement and the Green Lobby lobbied the government, and they said, you know, so what happened in Groningen, is in the northern part of the Netherlands. What happened is because of the gas winning, there were some minor earthquakes, and the government didn't pay damage, didn't compensate the damage quickly enough to the citizens in this area. And so the citizens there were complaining, and the Green Lobby, they used this. They said, well, government, we need to go to net zero anyway, and we have these earthquakes. Why don't we just stop winning gas from Groningen? And this is now government policy, parliament, majority in the parliament, and they went even so far that they are now filling the gas wells, they're filling them with concrete. So they can never be open again. This is now taking place in the Netherlands. So that's one. So at the same time, our country is very densely populated. And this is happening. Solar parks, if you go to the eastern part of the country where there is a little bit more space, you see solar parks everywhere. And Holland is not very sunny, as you know. It's raining all the time. So what are we doing with all these solar? You know, it's crazy. But anyway, we are doing this, subsidized, of course, big subsidies, billions of subsidies. Windmills, we have lots of windmills. And the most important plan, here you see a map of the North Sea and the Baltic Sea. And the North Sea, between the Netherlands and England, you see all these colors. And all these colors are wind parks. Yeah. And they want to build 30,000 windmills in the North Sea. It's crazy. I live near the coast, and when I walk along the beach, I already see dozens of them. But this is only the start. You know, it will continue. Maybe not, because you have heard that lately the tenders that they have for wind parks. Here you see an example. No bids submitted for new Dutch North Sea wind farm tender. So the market for wind parks is now so bad that the companies don't want to bid anymore on the tenders. And so this would be good news, you would say. But our minister, we have a minister of climate, of course. We have a minister of climate and green growth. That's how that's how they call the ministry. I always joke, no, this is wrong. It should be the Minister of Climate and Green Shrink. You know, that's the honest name for it. You know, that would be honest. Anyway, so in reaction to this news, she said, "Oh, we are going to miss our targets, so we will again give subsidy to new companies that are willing to do it." So she already offered again €1 billion subsidy for the next wind park. You know, so this is how they going to do it. One consequence of the whole policy is that this village is called Moerdijk. It's a small village, 1,200 people. Recently, it was announced that the village has to be gone, to be finished, because they say, because we have to extend industry. We are going to expand industry. This village is near Shell, chemical companies, etc., etc. But the main reason is that all this wind in the North Sea, they have to bring it to the land. And they're going to do that here. So it will be a converter stations for the electricity from the sea, and it will be hydrogen plants to all the excess wind electricity. They will use it for hydrogen. Yeah. And so we don't know yet what will happen, because Shell is one of the companies, of course, that wants to, if you give us subsidy, we want to build a hydrogen plant, And so Shell is working on a hydrogen plant in this region, but even with the subsidy, it's uncertain if it will be finished, because there is no market. Actually, I spoke with somebody working at Shell, and he says, well, yeah, we are trying, but there is no market for this. It's too expensive. And so, yeah, what can we do? And so I'm almost done. This I found hilarious. This was last week. This was in the news in the Netherlands. So this headline says, Netherlands faces billions in cost if renewable energy targets are missed. So there was a report last week, and it said, okay, wind is now in problem, solar is now in problem in the Netherlands, and so we probably miss our 2030 targets. And the Green Lobby ordered a report and said, what is going to happen if Holland misses the target? And the report says this will cost us 2.6 billion euros. Why? Because if we miss the target, we could get a penalty from the EU, or we could buy excess renewable energy from other countries. We did this before in 2020. So in 2020, we missed our target, but Denmark was already on top of their target. And so we paid 200 million to Denmark, and then could use some renewable energy from Denmark to add it to our target. But the gap between the target and what we have in 2030 will be much bigger. It will be 32% instead of 39%. And this gap will cost us 2.6 billion euros, according to a report. And if I follow like Dutch politics closely, this is how the people there in The Hague, this is really how they think. Yeah, they will do it. They will do it. They will not say, fuck it, Europe. It's going slower, but there is no business case, whatever. They will just pay like the penalty, It's completely crazy. So to end, is it all doom and gloom? No, Mark Morano also mentioned it. This Sweden is retreating from its bold green ambitions. There's also an article last week. Yeah, so we see some signs that in Europe, rationality is returning. In Sweden, there is now a more right-wing government that is building nuclear power plants, that is stopping wind parks in the sea, that's not subsidizing a battery company. A battery company went bankrupt, and the government is not bailing them out. But on the same time, the EU, this is Wopke Hoekstra, he is like the Dutch climate czar. And although internationally everybody stops doing like ambitious climate policy, the climate conference in Belém in Brazil was a big failure. And in the same period, the EU decided to up the target for 2040 to 90%. It's completely unrealistic. It's not going to happen, but they act as if nothing changes, and they go on. It reminds me, I didn't live under communism, of course, but it reminds me a little bit of communism, that before, in 1989, the communist leaders were still like having their life, and then suddenly the wall goes down and it suddenly ends, and I wonder if something like this will happen with Europe. I hope, of course, it will happen, but they act like if nothing is going on, And I found this cartoon. This cartoon. This is my final slide. This cartoon was based on Brexit, so you see England drifting away. But for me, it symbolizes also the state of technology, of our mindset in Europe. That we are literally going back in time, and yeah. So I'm very sorry for my European fellows that my talk was a little bit negative, but yeah, we are realists, and so we have to face the facts, and we will keep on fighting them, and let's hope that the Berlin Wall moment will come soon. So thank you very much.